It started just after dawn, when the mist still hung low over the Kansas fields and the sound of cicadas hadn't yet given way to the hum of tractors. The gravel road that led to Evelyn Grant's farm stretched for miles with no neighbors in sight. Just acres of wheat, a red barn in the distance, and a mailbox so faded it barely showed her name anymore. She was 74, lived alone, and preferred it that way. Every morning she walked the perimeter with her old hound Jasper, making sure the fences held and the gate locks hadn't rusted through. Nothing much ever changed out there until that morning. A black pickup appeared at the bend, headlights cutting through the fog, though the sun had already started rising. It slowed as it neared her driveway, gravel crunching beneath heavy tires. Evelyn stopped mid-step. Visitors were rare on her land, especially ones she didn't recognize. The truck idled for a beat before another followed, then a third, older one with its bumper hanging low. Inside, silhouettes shifted men, loud even before she could hear them. Jasper started barking, tail stiff, body tense. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. She knew that sound, that energy, trouble that didn't care to hide itself. The first door slammed. Out stepped a man in his early 30s, lean but built like he lived off fights and long nights. Travis Cole, local enough to know better, wild enough not to care. Two more followed Wade Miller, heavier, slower, the one with a permanent scowl, and Ricky Barnes, the youngest, trying too hard to look mean, still wearing yesterday's grin. Behind them, a woman climbed out of the third truck, her blonde hair tied up in a messy knot, chewing gum like it was a challenge. Lacey Durham. They looked like they'd been awake all night, chasing adrenaline and bad ideas. Evelyn said nothing. She just watched. Travis called out first, voice loud enough to wake the chickens. "Morning, ma'am. You sure got yourself a quiet little corner of the world." The false friendliness in his tone was a warning wrapped in charm. Evelyn didn't answer. She rested her hand on Jasper's collar and waited. "We're just passing through," he added, "but we heard you keep some good equipment out here. Maybe we can work out a trade." Wade laughed. "Trade?" he echoed, the word sounding like a joke. Ricky spat into the dirt. "Lady like you don't even use half the stuff in that barn." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Don't take another step past that fence," she said. Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't loud, but it cut clear across the field like a warning. "Shot." Travis smirked, pretending not to notice the glint of something metal beneath her sleeve. "Now hold on," he said. "We just came to talk. No need to get all jumpy." Lacey stepped closer, eyes scanning the yard. "You live out here alone?" she asked, almost curious. Evelyn met her stare. Long enough to know when company's not worth keeping. That was when Ricky tried the gate. Just a simple move, curiosity, arrogance, or both, but it was enough. Jasper barked again, low and steady. Evelyn didn't move. "You're trespassing," she said. Ricky laughed. "We're just looking." The lock clicked under his hand. "That fence is older than you," he muttered. Evelyn's tone sharpened. "But it's held up against worse than you." Travis turned back to his crew, chuckling. "Well, you heard her, boys. Old lady says we're trouble." He gave her a mocking salute, but behind the grin was calculation. They'd heard rumors money buried on her land, antique firearms in the barn, maybe even gold her late husband kept from his army days. Nobody in town could confirm it, but people whispered about Evelyn Grant like she was some relic from another time. Tougher than she looked. Always alone, always watching. What they didn't know was that every rumor had a grain of truth. Her husband Clarence had indeed served, but the real soldier in the family had always been her. And the weapons in that barn weren't decorations. Travis took a slow step forward. "Look, we ain't here to hurt nobody, but you got more land than you can handle. We take a few things off your hands, no harm done." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "You sure about that?" Wade laughed behind him. "Lady, you can't scare us with talk." She didn't blink. "Good," she said softly. "Because I don't do talk." The silence that followed was strange. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Then it happened fast. Ricky reached over the gate latch and swung it open like it was nothing. Jasper lunged forward, barking wild, straining against her grip. Evelyn's hand stayed firm. "Get off my property," she said again, slower this time, as if giving them a final chance to choose their fate. Travis looked back at Wade and nodded. The three men started walking toward the barn. Lacey hung back, half smiling, half uneasy. "Travis," she muttered, "this don't feel right." He waved her off. "Ain't nothing but a stubborn old woman and her dog." Inside the house, a shadow moved by the window. They didn't notice. Evelyn turned toward her porch and whistled once. Jasper sat, obedient, eyes locked on her. She opened the screen door and disappeared inside, quiet as wind. Wade grinned. "See that? She's hiding. Told you she's got something worth protecting." He picked up a rock and tossed it at a metal sign by the gate. It clanged loud enough to echo through the valley. "Ain't no one out here to help her," Ricky said, half to reassure himself. "Sheriff's 20 minutes out even if she calls." Travis grinned. "Then we got plenty of time." But they were wrong about two things. Evelyn hadn't gone to call for help, and they didn't have time. In the farmhouse kitchen, she moved with practiced calm. Every motion had purpose. She reached under the sink and pulled out a long, oil-wrapped case, unrolled it on the counter. And there it was, the Springfield rifle her husband once claimed had no equal. But this one was hers. Every mark on it had a memory. Every scratch, a story. She hadn't touched it in years, not because she'd forgotten how, but because she hadn't needed to remind anyone until now. She checked the chamber, loaded 3 rounds from a box marked 30-06, and stepped to the back porch. Through the glass, she could see Travis and the others now halfway to the barn, laughing, careless. Wade was swinging a crowbar. Ricky had a camera out recording the stunt for fun. "We'll post it later," he said. "Call it Farm Raid Challenge." Evelyn raised the rifle slowly, rested it against the doorframe, and whispered, "Let's see how funny it feels now." The first shot cracked the morning open like thunder. The metal pole beside the men split clean in half, sparks flying. They froze mid-step. The second shot hit the ground inches from Wade's boot, spraying dirt up his jeans. Ricky dropped the camera, eyes wide. "What the?" Travis held up his hands instinctively. Whoa, lady. What the hell's wrong with you?" Evelyn didn't answer. She stepped onto the porch, calm as sunrise, the rifle steady in her hands. "Next one won't miss," she said. Her voice was low, but carried across the yard like command. "You've got 10 seconds to leave my land." Wade started backing up. We're leaving. But Travis didn't move. Pride held him in place. "You just shot at us," he shouted. "That's assault." Evelyn adjusted, her grip slightly. "That's a warning. The law calls it self-defense when you ignore it." Lacey was already running toward the truck. Ricky followed, stumbling, panicked. But Travis just stood there, staring, fury mixing with disbelief. "This ain't over," he said. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "It is for you," she replied. The third shot took the cap off his head clean, spinning it into the dirt beside him. He flinched so hard he nearly fell. Wade grabbed his arm and yanked him back toward the fence. The trucks roared to life, tires spitting gravel as they sped down the road. The echo of engines faded fast, swallowed by the fields. Evelyn stood there unmoving until even the dust settled. Then she lowered the rifle and exhaled. Jasper trotted up beside her, tail wagging slightly as if proud. "Good boy," she said, quietly. "Let's go fix that gate." She leaned the rifle against the porch rail and picked up her toolbox like it was any other morning. But somewhere deep down she knew it wasn't. That kind of encounter didn't just end it traveled. The type of men who walked into trouble didn't walk away quietly. And in a town like theirs, word spread faster than weather. By noon, Sheriff Don Harper's patrol truck was rolling up the drive. He'd known Evelyn for years, since before her husband died, since the days when she still came to Sunday service with her hair pinned and her hands smelling faintly of gun oil. He stepped out slow, hat in hand. "Heard there was some excitement," he said, half joking. Evelyn didn't smile. "Wasn't excitement," she replied. "It was intrusion." He sighed, glancing toward the gate, the bullet marks still fresh in the metal post. "You could have called me," he said. "Didn't have time," she answered. "Besides, I didn't need a gun and a badge. Just the gun." Harper scratched his beard. "You gonna tell me what really happened?" Evelyn looked him dead in the eye. "I warned them. They kept coming. They're lucky I was feeling patient." The sheriff chuckled softly. "Still the same, huh?" She didn't respond. He took out his notepad. "I'll file it as a trespass warning. Nobody got hurt, right?" "Not this time," she said. He nodded. "I'll talk to him. Make sure they don't come back." She looked past him toward the road. They will. Boys like that always think they're owed something. Harper hesitated. "You sure you're okay out here alone?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "I've been alone a long time. That's never been the problem." When he drove off, the fields returned to their quiet rhythm, but the air felt heavier. Evelyn sat on her porch and watched the horizon. Her hands were steady, but her mind drifted to the part of her life nobody in town ever saw the medals in: the old cedar chest upstairs, the folded uniform wrapped in cloth, the news clippings from 50 years ago that called her the Eye of Fort McCoy. They'd written her name once, then forgotten it when the wars ended. But she hadn't forgotten herself. That steadiness, that precision, it was muscle memory, and this morning had stirred it awake. Later that evening, she poured herself a cup of coffee and watched the sunset paint her fields gold. Jasper lay at her feet, tail twitching in sleep. On the far ridge, she thought she saw dust kick up again just for a second. Probably nothing, she told herself. But her hand found the rifle leaning against the wall anyway. Habit. She didn't scare easy, but she knew men like Travis. When pride gets bruised, it bleeds back mean. And something told her this wasn't finished. By nightfall, the local Facebook pages were buzzing. A video clip had surfaced, grainy, shaky, but clear enough. It showed 3 men shouting at an old woman behind a fence, followed by the sound of gunfire. Someone had filmed it from the road, a passing trucker maybe. The caption read, "Old lady in Kansas drops warning shots on trespassers. Legend." The comments were endless. Some cheered her on. Others called her crazy, but all agreed on one thing: they wanted to know who she was. Evelyn Grant's name spread faster than wildfire, and before the night was over, a news van was already making its way down that long gravel road, and somewhere in a cheap motel 30 miles away, Travis. Cole watched the same video on his phone, jaw clenched. "She humiliated us," he said. Wade muttered something under his breath. Ricky didn't speak at all. Lacey sat on the edge of the bed, arms crossed. "You brought it on yourself," she said quietly. "You should have left when she warned you." Travis turned to her slowly. "You think this is over?" She met his eyes. "I think it better be." But he just smirked, eyes cold. "She made me look weak. I ain't leaving it like that." Back at the farm, Evelyn locked her doors, checked the windows, and turned off the lights one by one. The house creaked as the wind shifted outside. She wasn't afraid. Fear was for people who hadn't seen worse. She'd spent her life aiming steady while chaos screamed around her. Whatever came next, she'd meet it the same way she always had: calm, patient, and deadly precise. The night came down heavy, the kind that swallowed sound and stretched every shadow twice its size. The horizon turned ink black, and the wind cut, sharper than it had in months. Inside the farmhouse, Evelyn sat in her rocker by the window, the rifle cleaned and resting within reach, the old clock ticking steady on the wall. Jasper lifted his head now and then, ears twitching toward sounds that weren't there yet or maybe were. She trusted him more than silence. Down the highway, Travis Cole's pickup thundered back into town, its muffler coughing as if protesting, the anger boiling inside him. He hadn't said a word since the video went viral, but everyone in that motel room could read the storm in his jaw. Wade sat on the edge of a bed rolling a cigarette. Ricky stared at the TV that kept replaying the same clip: an old black woman on a porch standing her ground with a rifle. Lacey had left 2 hours earlier, said she wanted no part of what came next. Nobody stopped her. Nobody ever did once Travis got that look. the one that meant he'd rather ruin everything than lose face. By morning, Evelyn's name was all over the county. Radio hosts argued about her. Reporters showed up on the gravel road trying to get a quote. She didn't say a word. "Ma'am, folks are calling you the sharp widow," one of them said from behind the fence. "You gonna tell us your side?" Evelyn sipped her coffee and turned back to her porch. "My side's right here," she said, pointing at the fields. "You can read it yourself." That clip alone went viral too, an old woman's calm standing, taller than any headline. Sheriff Harper came by again, this time with an edge in his voice. "Evelyn, you're trending for the wrong reasons. You know what these boys are like. They don't take humiliation easy." She nodded. "Then they'll make a mistake, and I'll be ready." He sighed. "You can't keep taking this into your own hands." "It's my own land," she said. "Always has been." He had no answer for that. He never did. That night, the first truck came back. She heard it before she saw the lights, the low growl of tires on gravel. Jasper's head shot up, growl low in his throat. Evelyn reached for the lamp and turned it off. Darkness wrapped the room tight. The truck stopped at the end of the drive, engine still running. A second one followed, then a third. She counted. Footsteps, 2, maybe 3 men outside. Voices low, hurried. One of them laughed. "Travis. She thinks she can scare us with a few warning shots?" Another voice, Wade's, answered. "You sure you want to do this? Cameras everywhere now." "Ain't nobody watching tonight," Travis said. "We're just taking back what she owes." Evelyn's fingers brushed the edge of the rifle's stock, the familiar weight steadying her pulse. She eased open the window latch and felt the chill roll in. The moonlight caught her face just enough to show calm, not fear, never fear. The men crept past the gate, flashlights flicking through the dark. Ricky carried a gas can. "We'll torch the barn first," he said. "She'll come running." Travis grinned. "Then we end this." She whispered, "Not tonight, boys." The first shot shattered the gas can before Ricky even reached the barn door. Flames erupted skyward, lighting the yard like daylight. The men dove for cover, cursing. Travis shouted, "She's shooting again!" Wade yelled, "I told you she's serious." Evelyn fired once more, the bullet taking the flashlight clean out of Travis's hand. It burst like a spark. She shifted positions, smooth and silent, reloading by touch alone. Years of practice don't rust. Not for people like her. Inside her head, another voice rose, the memory of training grounds half a century gone. She was 21 again, the only woman in her unit, the only one who hit 10 out of 10 at 200 yards. Sergeant Pike had called her Miss Deadeye. They'd laughed at first until she outshot all of them. "You sure you don't want combat duty?" Pike had asked once. "They ain't ready for me out there," she'd said. And she was right, they weren't. The gunfire outside yanked her back to the present. Wade screamed, clutching his leg ricochet. Nothing fatal. Travis crawled behind a bale of hay, fury rising with his breath. "She ain't gonna scare me off my own win," he shouted. Evelyn called out across the field, voice calm, cutting through smoke. "This ain't your win. It's your last warning. Leave while you still can." Sheriff Harper's headlights appeared on the horizon then, slicing through the dark. Someone must have called in the blaze. Travis froze, then bolted for his truck. Ricky followed, limping, dragging Wade. Within seconds, the engine screamed back to life, the red glow of taillights vanishing into the night. Harper pulled up seconds later, saw the flames, the bullet casings, the calm woman standing with a rifle in her hand. "Lord above, Evelyn," he muttered. "What did you do this time?" She didn't look at him. Stopped it before it started. By dawn, the fire was out, the sheriff gone, and the story had already spun out of her control. News crews lined the road. "Hero or menace?" the headlines asked. People drove miles just to glimpse her mailbox. Some left flowers, some threats. One letter read, "You give us hope." Another, "You'll regret this." She stacked them all on the kitchen table like weights she refused to carry. She'd lived too long to care what strangers thought. But the worst came 3 days later when she found a bullet casing on her porch that wasn't hers. Just sitting there, polished clean, placed like a calling card. She turned it over in her palm, lips pressed tight. "So it's going to be like that," she said. Jasper growled. She nodded. "I know." That evening, she drove into town, parked her old Ford by the feed store, and stepped inside the sheriff's office. "You need to put those boys behind bars," she told Harper. He rubbed his temples. "Evelyn, I can't arrest a man on suspicion. I need evidence." She set the casing on his desk. "There's your evidence." He shook his head. "That's not enough." "It will be soon," she said, and walked out before he could reply. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on the porch under the stars, the rifle across her lap. The moon was bright enough to see the rows of wheat stretching forever, a sea of gold and shadow. Somewhere out there, men were planning, and she could feel it the way a soldier feels a shift in air before a fight. But she wasn't planning to wait. Not this time. She went to the barn before sunrise, pulled out the chest she hadn't opened in decades. Inside were her old service patches, a folded letter from a colonel, and beneath them, a medal she never wore. She ran her fingers over it once, then set it aside and pulled out a smaller box. Ammunition, polished, wrapped in oilcloth. "Clarence would have told me not to do this," she said aloud. "But Clarence ain't here." By afternoon, the sheriff got a call from a local hardware store. "Your widow neighbor bought every roll of barbed wire we had," the clerk said. Harper sighed. "That means she's expecting company." He tried calling, but she didn't pick up. The phone just rang over and over, echoing through an empty kitchen. Out by the fields, Evelyn worked methodically, setting traps, tightening fences, placing motion lights that looked ordinary until triggered. She wasn't preparing for a siege. She was restoring order the only way she knew, by precision, by patience, by being ready. That night, the wind rose again, carrying the smell of rain and gunpowder long before either came. She sat inside, lights off, Jasper by her chair, listening to the hum of crickets and the faint crackle of radio chatter somewhere far off. Her fingers tapped the stock of her rifle, slow, rhythmic, steady. Out there, in the dark, a pickup slowed, its lights off, its driver certain this time the old woman was asleep. He was wrong again. The night Travis came back, the air itself felt wrong, too still, too thick, like even the wind was waiting for something to happen. Evelyn had been expecting it for 3 days. The signs were there. Fresh tire marks by the road, motion lights triggered without footsteps, the same coyote tracks circling closer to the house than usual. She didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. She moved through the farmhouse without turning on a single light. Everything she needed was already in place. Rifle by the door, backup rounds on the table, flashlight taped beneath the porch rail. The clock ticked toward midnight. Jasper growled low from the hallway. Then, faint but certain, came the crunch of gravel, the sound of 3 trucks idling at a distance. She whispered, "So you brought friends." Outside, Travis and his crew had come loaded this time. They weren't laughing now. They moved with the quiet rhythm of men pretending to be professionals. Travis wore a dark jacket, a shotgun slung over his shoulder. Wade carried a crowbar again. Ricky a flashlight, and a fourth man, one she didn't recognize, trailed behind with a duffel bag that clinked faintly. "She won't see it coming," Travis said. "We cut the power, she's blind." The fourth man snorted. "You sure she's even worth it?" "I ain't leaving until she learns," Travis hissed. "She embarrassed me in front of the whole county. That woman's got a lesson coming." He didn't know that the woman waiting in that farmhouse had written the book on lessons like that. When the power cut out, Evelyn didn't flinch. She'd already pulled the fuses herself 2 hours earlier. The darkness didn't belong to them, it belonged to her. She moved through it easily, every creak and board under her control. The first flashlight beam flickered across the yard, sweeping wide, then stopped on the barn. Wade whispered, "Let's start there." Travis motioned for Ricky to follow. They split up, 2 toward the barn, 2 toward the porch. Jasper's growl deepened, but Evelyn tapped his head lightly. Stay. She took her place by the window, sighted through the dark and waited for the right sound. A door hinge squeaked. Someone whispered, "You see anything?" That was all she needed. One shot shattered the night, cutting through the wooden post beside Wade's shoulder. Splinters exploded into his face. "She's awake!" Ricky screamed. "You think?" Travis barked. Another shot rang out, this one hitting the tire of the truck nearest the fence. The hiss of air followed like a snake's warning. They dove behind the fence. "We gotta flush her out," Travis yelled. Evelyn's voice came back cold and steady. "You're not flushing out anything but your luck." They froze. That voice didn't sound scared. It sounded like command. For a long moment, neither side moved. The only sound was the soft crackle of the distant generator she'd rigged to hum randomly from the shed, a trick from her training days, to confuse direction by sound. Travis gestured for the fourth man, the one with the duffel. "Smoke her out," he said. The man pulled something from the bag, a Molotov cocktail, crude but ready. He lit the rag. The flame flared, bright and stupid. "Throw it," Travis ordered. Evelyn saw the flicker before the throw and fired once. The bottle exploded midair, raining fire backward. The man screamed, dropping to his knees as his sleeve caught flame. Wade and Ricky ran to smother it, shouting curses. Travis shouted, "She hit him, you see that? She hit him clean." He couldn't believe it, an old woman who shot straighter in the dark than most men at noon. Evelyn reloaded calmly, hands moving without sound. She had learned to breathe between gunfire, to let the noise become part of her pulse. It was training that never left. In her mind, she was back in Wisconsin, 1968, Fort McCoy. Training range, 60 degrees of heat, targets shaped like men. They'd told her she wasn't allowed to qualify at expert level because women didn't deploy. She'd smiled, stepped up anyway, and hit every mark. The instructor had stared, dumbfounded. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" She'd answered, "My daddy taught me to hit what needs hitting." A gunshot snapped her back. This one wasn't hers. The porch railing splintered inches from her face. Travis had fired blind into the window. She ducked, exhaled, and whispered, "Good try." Then she moved fast out the back door, across the porch, down into the dark where the barn shadows met the corn rows. She'd planned this ground like a map of memory. Every dip, every ridge. They'd walk right into it. Travis and Wade crept toward the porch, thinking she was still inside. Ricky hung back, shaking. "Man, this is crazy," he said. "She's ex-military or something." "She's a liar," Travis spat. "She's an old lady who got lucky." But then he saw something glint in the field, a tiny reflection. A second later, his flashlight flickered out. "What the—" And that's when the sound came, the click of a rifle bolt sliding clean into place. Evelyn's voice floated from the dark. "Step away from my house." Wade panicked first. He fired 3 times toward the sound. The bullets hit nothing but air and soil. She let him empty his weapon, then spoke again, closer this time. "You done?" He turned just in time to see her silhouette against the moonlight. The rifle was steady, her stance unshakable. She didn't aim at his head. She aimed at his ego. The next shot grazed the shotgun in Travis's hand, spinning it away like a toy. He shouted, more from disbelief than pain. "Who are you?" Evelyn took 1 step forward. "Someone you should have left alone." Ricky bolted. He dropped his flashlight, tripped over the gate, and kept running until the darkness swallowed him. Wade followed, dragging the injured man. Only Travis stayed, frozen, the sound of his own breath louder than sense. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he yelled. "You'll rot in jail for this." Evelyn lowered the rifle slightly. "I've been rotting in silence for 70 years. Jail sounds peaceful." He tried to rush her, then a bad move. She didn't fire. She simply sidestepped, brought the butt of the rifle across his shoulder, and he went down hard. She stood over him, calm as ever. "You don't win fights?" You start with hate, she said. You just keep losing until someone stops you. So, sirens came minutes later, the red and blue glow painting the wheat. Sheriff Harper stepped out first, his deputy right behind. Good Lord, he muttered. I told you not to do this alone. I wasn't alone, Evelyn said, motioning toward Jasper now sitting beside Travis's groaning body. Had all the help I needed. The sheriff knelt beside Travis. You're lucky she didn't kill you. She's insane, Travis spat. She shot at us. Harper looked around at the scene, the broken shotgun, the burnt ground, the traps along the fence. He knew better. She warned you, repeatedly. The next morning, headlines screamed across every platform. Elderly Kansas woman defends farm from armed gang. They picked the wrong grandma. News anchors called her fearless. Veterans called her one of their own. Reporters camped on her driveway. She didn't say much, just one line that made every broadcast in the country. I didn't wake up brave. I woke up prepared. What she didn't tell them was that the fight had only begun. Travis and his men were in custody, but someone higher had bailed them before noon. Money moved fast in towns where silence could be bought. Harper came back by dusk, grim-faced. They're out, he said. Evelyn didn't react. Of course they are. He lowered his voice. You need protection. Let me get a deputy to stay out here for a while. She shook her head. You'd only get him hurt. This land protects its own. After he left, she sat on her porch again. The same chair, the same rifle. But something in her eyes had changed. Not fear, not triumph, just the look of someone who'd seen the cycle too many times to call it victory. The wheat waved slow in the evening wind, whispering like memory. She spoke softly, almost to herself. They still don't know who I am. Because she wasn't just a farmer. She wasn't just a widow. Long before any of them were born, her name had been carved into a list most folks never saw, the elite marksmen of the old U.S. Army shooting corps. The same records that got buried when women were written out of history. But somewhere in a military archive next to faded film reels and forgotten commendations, one line still read clear. Grant, Evelyn M. Perfect score, Fort McCoy. Unmatched under fire. And now, in a Kansas field decades later, that legend had come home. Morning sunlight broke over the fields like a reluctant truth, pouring through the cracks of the old farmhouse and landing across Evelyn Grant's kitchen table. The rifle still rested there beside a half-finished cup of coffee gone cold. Jasper was asleep under the chair, snoring softly, unaware that the quiet they'd earned overnight was already unraveling. By 8 o'clock, 3 news vans crowded the road outside her gate. Reporters leaned over fences like they were peering into history. Microphones, cameras, drones. The story of the Kansas Sharpshooter grandma had spread from local radio to national breakfast shows before sunrise. Anchors were arguing on live television. Was she a hero or a vigilante? One panelist said she was a symbol of self-reliance. Another called her dangerously unhinged. Evelyn didn't bother correcting either one. She hadn't lived her life for definitions. Sheriff Harper drove up mid-morning, the brim of his hat shadowing a face that looked 10 years older than it had last night. He stepped onto her porch and nodded at the reporters clustered near the fence. They've been here since dawn. You planning to say anything? Evelyn took a slow sip from her mug. They're looking for a soundbite. I'm not giving them a sermon, he sighed. Travis and his men lawyered up, their attorney spinning it like you set a trap. I set a fence, she said flatly. They climbed it. Doesn't matter what I think, Eve. The DA's got calls from Topeka and Washington both. Somebody high up's interested in this case. Let them be interested, she said. I've got chores. When he left, she went back to her work, fixing the fence, feeding the chickens, replacing a broken latch on the barn door. Every motion was a way of telling her body that life wasn't chaos yet. But just before noon, a black government SUV rolled down her drive, the kind with tinted windows and plates that said nothing. A woman stepped out first, mid-40s, gray suit, military posture. She didn't flash a badge right away. Mrs. Grant? Who's asking? Special Agent Karen Doyle, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Took you folks long enough. Thought maybe Homeland would get here first. Doyle managed a small professional smile. We're reviewing an incident involving interstate firearms discharge and potential threats to federal property. Evelyn glanced around the empty field. Federal property? You see any of your flags flying out here? The agent lowered her tone. We're also aware that your name appears in archived military records classified range tests at Fort McCoy, 1968. That ring a bell? For a second, the world went very still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Evelyn set down her toolbox and met the woman's eyes. So they finally opened the file. Doyle nodded. It was sealed. Most people wouldn't know it existed, but your name came up when the footage hit the defense feeds. Some of our analysts recognized your shooting pattern. Evelyn laughed once, a dry sound. Guess old habits really do leave fingerprints. The agent studied her. You know, half the brass thought that file was a myth. The eye of Fort McCoy woman who outshot the instructors and disappeared after basic. She didn't disappear, Evelyn said quietly. She just got told to stay behind and type reports while the men went overseas. Doyle hesitated. There's interest in bringing you in for debriefing. Evelyn shook her head. I'm done with uniforms. I fought my fight already. It's not a summons, Doyle said. It's a request. There's talk of commendations, maybe recognition. Evelyn turned back toward her porch. Recognition's just a medal people pin on you when they need to feel patriotic. I don't need it. Doyle's expression softened. Then at least, let us help keep you safe. Travis Cole's lawyer isn't acting alone. The money behind him, private contractors, malicious sympathizers, people who think your story embarrasses them. They'll come again, maybe not with trucks this time. Evelyn studied her face. You saying the government can keep me safer than I kept myself? The agent's silence was answer enough. By the time Doyle left, another van had pulled up. This one bore the logo of a national network. A young reporter in a blue windbreaker hopped out, camera crew trailing. Ms. Grant, I'm Darius Holt with Channel 7 News, he said breathlessly. I grew up in Wichita. Folks out there are calling you a legend. She squinted at him. Legend's a fancy word for target, son. You sure you want to stand near one? He smiled nervously. I just want to tell the real story. People think you're some gun-crazy loner. Others say you're an unsung veteran. Which is it? She leaned on the porch railing. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Depends who's listening. Darius gestured toward the burned patch of soil near the barn. Mind if we film? Mind if you ask first? She said. He lowered the camera. She nodded toward the barn. Go ahead. Just don't step on the chickens. They bite harder than reporters. When the segment aired that night, it opened with a wide shot of Evelyn fixing her fence, sunlight, catching the steel of the rifle slung across her shoulder. Darius's voice narrated softly. In a town where most folks forget the names of their neighbors, one woman reminded everyone that some legends never die. They just wait quietly until they're needed again. The clip went viral before midnight. Hashtags flooded the feeds. Sharpshooter Grandma. Eye of McCoy. Stand your ground. Politicians weighed in. Gun rights groups praised her. Advocacy groups called for reform. Talk shows argued for hours while Evelyn sat in her kitchen peeling apples, the TV on mute. She had lived long enough to know attention was just another kind of crossfire. 2 days later, her phone rang. A voice she hadn't heard in 50 years said, Ma'am, you probably don't remember me, but this is Sergeant Tom Reeves. I was in your platoon at Fort McCoy. I'm retired now, but I saw the footage. I told my grandkids I trained with the best shot the Army ever had. She smiled faintly. Reeves, you used to miss every third target because you blinked. Laughed. Still do. Listen, they're talking about holding a ceremony, maybe even reinstating your record officially. You deserve that. I deserve peace, she said, but I'll settle for honesty. That night, another SUV crept past, her gate. This one didn't stop. just slowed enough for her motion lights to flicker on. Inside, two men watched from the shadows. One of them spoke into a phone. Yeah, she's still here, alone. When morning came, the local sheriff found the power lines cut again clean, deliberate. They're not done, he told her. You should leave for a while. She shook her head. You ever seen a tree uproot itself to avoid lightning? Doesn't work that way. Harper frowned. You can't guard this place forever. I don't have to, she said, just long enough for the truth to stick. The next 48 hours turned her farm into a rallying point. Veterans started arriving first, one or two, then dozens. Men and women in faded caps, walking with canes, carrying flags, folding chairs, even coolers. They camped by her fence, saying they were just keeping an eye out. Someone set up a tent that read Grant's Guard. Evelyn didn't ask for it, but she didn't send them away either. Reporters swarmed like flies. One shouted, "Do you consider yourself a hero to America's veterans?" She answered, "Heroes don't need fan clubs. They need respect when they come home." That line trended for a week. Late that evening, Darius Holt returned with a small microphone clipped to his shirt. "You've become a symbol, ma'am," he said quietly. "People are comparing you to Annie Oakley." Evelyn chuckled. Annie Oakley had a stage. I had a range. He hesitated. What would you say to Travis Cole if he were watching this interview right now? She thought for a long moment before replying. I'd tell him he mistook quiet for weakness. That's a mistake men have been making since time began. By the time the segment aired, Travis had disappeared. His lawyer claimed he was in treatment. Harper didn't buy it. That kind of man don't check into clinics, he muttered. He hides behind someone richer. 2 weeks later, Agent Doyle returned, this time with a folder. We ran. Deeper background, she said. Your attackers were funded by a private security firm under investigation for illegal arms sales. They thought your property was storing surplus weapons, something left from the Cold War. False intel, but they believed it. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. So it wasn't just pride. It was business. Doyle nodded. They picked your farm because, of old land records, your husband's name shows up on an Army requisition list from 1971. They thought he hid government property here. Evelyn's voice went flat. Clarence didn't hide anything except his disappointment. I'm sorry? Doyle asked gently. She looked away. He came home from Vietnam angry at everything that moved. I was the only target that couldn't fight back without losing him. Guess I learned patience from that. The agent said nothing. That night, Evelyn opened the cedar chest again and laid the medals across the table. One for marksmanship, one for service, one for valor she'd never been officially awarded. The lamplight caught their dull gleam. She picked up the last one, a bullet casing she'd kept from Fort McCoy, the first she ever fired in qualification. She whispered, "Full circle." Outside, the veterans' tents rustled in the wind. Someone was singing low, a war hymn turned into a lullaby. The sound reached her porch, soft and steady. The following morning, a letter arrived, official seal, Department of Defense. Inside, a single page. The department acknowledges Evelyn Grant's exemplary record of service and marksmanship. Her contributions are hereby reinstated and recognized with full honors. She stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and slipped it into the drawer beside her husband's photograph. That afternoon, she drove into town for the first time in weeks. People stopped and waved. A little girl outside the grocery store handed her a drawing of a farm with a rainbow and a woman holding a rifle. My daddy says you're brave, the child said. Evelyn smiled. Brave's just what people call you when you survive doing what's necessary. When she returned home, the crowd outside had thinned. Only a handful of veterans remained, sipping coffee by the fence. Harper was there too, leaning against his patrol truck. Looks like peace might finally stick around, he said. She looked toward the horizon. Peace don't stick. You just keep earning it. As the sun dipped low, turning the sky the color of copper, she sat, On her porch with Jasper at her feet and the rifle across her lap, not out of fear, but out of memory. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, but she knew it wasn't a storm. It was just Kansas reminding her that quiet never lasted forever. And she smiled, faint but certain, because now the world finally knew what she'd always known. Some legends don't need rewriting, they just need remembering. It started with a headline that wasn't supposed to exist. Veteran Sharpshooter's story, hijacked by political factions. Evelyn didn't need the television on to know her name, was being dragged through mud. She could feel it through the calls she didn't answer, the reporters parked at the crossroads, the edited clips on the internet that twisted her silence into defiance and her patience into paranoia. In one version of the story, she was a conservative, icon defending her land. In another, she was a reckless vigilante fueling extremism. Nobody wanted the truth, they wanted a symbol they could own. Evelyn Grant didn't belong to anyone, and that was the problem. She sat on her porch that morning, mug in hand, watching the horizon stretch wide and golden. Jasper lay by her feet, tail thumping lazily. The farm was quiet, but the quiet wasn't peace anymore, it was the breath before something broke. Sheriff Harper showed up before noon, worry creasing his face. "It's getting ugly out there," he said. "Your face is on billboards now. People are raising money in your name." "For what?" she asked. He shrugged. "Whatever makes them feel righteous." She smiled thinly. "That's America for you, always needing a hero or a villain. Sometimes both in the same morning." "Eve," he said softly, "they're planning a rally in town, supposed to be in your honor." "I didn't ask for it." "I know. But they're using your name anyway, and the other side's planning to show up too. You know what that means." She did. She'd seen enough conflict to recognize the early scent of violence. "I'll stay out here," she said. "Let them scream at each other somewhere else." But staying out didn't mean staying uninvolved, because later that afternoon Darius Holt came back, this time without his camera crew, without his badge, just a small notebook in hand. He looked different now, tired, heavy. "They're twisting you," he said as soon as she opened the door. "The story's not yours anymore." Evelyn motioned for him to sit. "Stories stop being ours the minute people start needing them." "But I can set the record straight," he said. "I can show who you really are." She studied him for a moment, then nodded toward the old cedar chest by the fireplace. "You want truth? It's in there. Read it yourself." He lifted the ordi lid slowly, reverently, like it was a relic. Inside lay her medals, photos, and a folded letter yellowed by time. He picked it up carefully. "To Private Evelyn M. Grant," he read aloud. "For marksmanship excellence and conduct above. Expectation during advanced field training. Record score, 100%. He looked up. "They never gave this to you?" "They gave it to a man who missed 3 targets, she said. "Said it'd look better for morale." He shook his head slowly. "You ever think about telling that part on camera?" "No," she said, "because then it becomes a headline, and headlines get rewritten faster than truth." The wind shifted outside. Tires crunched on gravel again. Jasper barked once. Evelyn peered through the window and saw 2 unfamiliar trucks at the gate. No reporters this time. No logos. Just men standing too straight, moving too slow. Darius saw her expression change. "Friends of yours?" "No," she said, standing up. "Not even close." The truck stayed idling. One man stepped out wearing a jacket with no insignia but a gun holster visible at his side. He called out, "Mrs. Grant, we're with a local militia group, Patriot Ridge Chapter. We'd like to thank you personally for standing your ground." Evelyn opened the door but didn't step out. "You can thank me by turning around." He smiled like it was a joke. "We're on your side, ma'am. We're here to help protect your land. Government can't touch you now." "Government never tried," she said coldly. "Only fools with too much time." Another man stepped closer. "We heard the Fed's been snooping around. We don't take kindly to that. We got friends who can make sure nobody bothers you again," Darius whispered. You want me to call the sheriff? She shook her head. Not yet. Her voice rose just enough for the men to hear. You boys think waving flags and guns makes you soldiers? The leader chuckled. We're patriots. No, she said. Patriots build. You just break and brag about it. The man's smile faltered. Ma'am, we mean no disrespect. Then show some, she snapped. My fence line ends 30 feet that way. Cross it, and I'll remind you why your granddaddies stayed on their side of history. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. The men shifted, uneasily. Darius could feel it, the weight of something about to go wrong. Then one of them spat on the ground. World's gone soft, he muttered, turning back to his truck. Even the heroes forgot who they're supposed to fight for. They drove, off slow but not far enough to make her believe it was over. That evening Harper arrived again, headlights washing the porch in yellow. Heard about your visitors, he said grimly. Half the town did too. You all right? I'm fine, she said. They were just boys pretending to be soldiers. You're not safe, Eve. They've been posting online plans, maps, threats. You're becoming a rally point for people who want a war. She looked out over the fields where the moonlight spilled across her crops like silver. Then I'll make sure they learn what war really costs. Darius was still sitting inside, tapping notes in his phone. You can't fight the whole country, he said quietly. I don't have to, she replied. I just have to stand long enough for the truth to stop running. That night she went out to the barn again. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. She cleaned the rifle like she always did when sleep wouldn't come. But this time, she opened the second crate, the one nobody else had seen. Inside were her husband's old munitions carefully stored, and a smaller, heavier case marked Confidential, Property of the U.S. Army. She had kept it locked for 50 years. By dawn, Harper's radio crackled with an emergency call. Multiple, armed vehicles had been spotted heading west toward Evelyn Grant's property. He floored it. When he arrived, the road was blocked by pickup trucks flying makeshift flags. Dozens of men stood in the field, shouting, chanting her name like it was a banner. But it wasn't praise. It was possession. Evelyn stood at her gate, rifle in hand, jaw set. You come here to honor me or to start trouble, one man shouted. You're one of us, ma'am. Don't side with them. I'm not on anyone's side but mine, she said. Someone fired a shot into the air. The crowd roared. Harper shouted through his bullhorn, Put the weapons down, everyone stand down. But chaos had already started moving. Evelyn lifted the rifle and fired once straight up. The crack silenced the field. Every head turned. Listen close, she said, her voice cutting through wind and fear alike. This is my land. You will not fight your wars on it. You will not use my name for your noise. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one man lowered his gun. Another followed. Within minutes, the tension deflated, confusion replacing rage. They came for violence but found discipline instead. Harper exhaled, lowering his weapon. You just stopped a riot, he said. No, she replied. I stopped a memory from repeating itself. Later, when the field was empty and the reporters had packed up their cameras, Evelyn sat on her porch again, Jasper curled against her leg. Darius sat beside her, recorder off. You could have let it happen, he said. Let them destroy each other. You'd be a martyr by morning. She shook her head. Martyrs don't get to tell the story. He smiled faintly. Then what are you now? Evelyn looked toward the horizon, where dawn was climbing over the wheat. I'm a warning, she said, and warnings don't fade, they echo. That night, under a Kansas sky washed with stars, she finally slept for the first time in days. The world outside was still loud, divided, hungry for symbols. But her land was quiet again, and that, to her, was victory enough for now. The news said the story was over. The pundits said it had been resolved. But Evelyn Grant knew better. Some stories don't end, they just go underground. For 2 quiet weeks, her land held its breath. No more trucks, no more headlines. The crowd that had camped by her fence had long gone home, leaving only flattened grass and a few tattered flags fluttering against the wire. The veterans sent her letters of thanks. The sheriff checked in less and less. Even Darius Holt stopped by only once to leave a note that read, "For once, truth made it past the cameras." Evelyn read it, smiled faintly, and went back to her chores. She fed the chickens, mended her fences, and pretended the world outside the farm was calming down. But she could feel it, like a storm still forming beyond sight, the wrong kind of silence. The first man crossed the trip line she'd wired at the barn door. A flare hissed up, bursting into white light that washed over the yard like daybreak. The men froze. The second trap went next, a sharp metallic snap as the gate lock engaged, automatically closing them in. Turner's calm cracked for the first time. "She's wired the property," he shouted. Evelyn's voice rang out clear. "You think I survived 70 years of men like you without learning how to hold my ground?" The nearest operative aimed his weapon toward the porch. She fired once, taking the barrel off his rifle clean. Sparks flew, his hands jerking back, in shock. "That was a warning," she said. "Next one's education." Turner ducked behind a car door, radio crackling at his belt. "Do not engage," he barked. "Retrieve the package and retreat." "Package," she muttered. "That's what people like you always call the truth." Another voice came through his radio, a woman's tone sharp, distant. "Status?" Turner hissed. "Compromised. Civilian is hostile. Terminate if necessary." Evelyn heard it clear as a bell in the still night. Her jaw tightened. "So that's the plan," she whispered. She took position by the corner of the porch, steadying her aim. The rifle cracked again, one shot into the nearest SUV's engine block. The vehicle hissed, smoke pouring out. Another followed. Within seconds, half the convoy was disabled. Turner shouted, "Hold your fire, we'll be back with a warrant." "You already brought your kind of warrant," she called back. 6 men and no conscience. He motioned retreat, but not before. One of his operatives disobeyed. The man raised his weapon and fired toward the porch. The bullet tore through the wood railing, missing her by inches. Jasper barked wildly from inside. Evelyn exhaled slow and returned a single shot. The man's shoulder snapped back, his gun dropping into the dirt. Turner swore under his breath, dragging him toward the car. The remaining trucks peeled away, engines roaring, tires spitting gravel. Within minutes, the fields were empty again. Evelyn lowered the rifle, heart steady, breath even. She'd learned long ago that the danger wasn't over when the noise stopped. It was when the silence returned. She called Harper at dawn. "They came again," she said simply. His voice groaned through static. "How bad?" "They left breathing. I gave them that mercy." By mid-morning, the farm was crawling with law enforcement. State troopers, federal agents, even a news helicopter, circling overhead. Agent Doyle arrived last, her face pale as she stepped out of her car. "They weren't supposed to move without authorization," she said. "They don't follow orders." "They give them," Evelyn replied. Doyle looked at the smoking vehicles still half buried in her ditch. "You could have killed them." "They came to kill me," she said evenly. "I just reminded them who started the countdown." That night, the news broke nationwide. Armed federal contractors clash with Kansas widow in alleged black ops retrieval. Commentators went wild. Conspiracy theorists called her a whistleblower. Others said she was part of an underground rebellion. The FBI called it a misunderstanding under review. But Evelyn called it what it was: unfinished business. Darius Holt came back again 2 days later, this time wearing a bulletproof vest under his jacket. "They're calling you a living ghost," he said. "Nobody knows how you keep coming out of this alive." She smiled faintly. "Practice." He leaned forward. "Was it true? Project Sentinel, was it about tracking civilians?" Evelyn looked past him, out to the sunset painting the sky in bruised orange. "They wanted to know how people moved when they thought no one was watching. They called it national security. I called it fear with a budget." He scribbled fast in his notebook. "You realize this story could change everything?" She shook her head. "It won't change a thing. They'll rename it, repackage it, and do it again somewhere else. All I can do is make sure the next time someone like me stands up, they're not standing alone." He studied her for a long moment. "Then let me help you tell it." Evelyn considered it, then nodded once. "But on one condition. No hero headlines, no martyrdom, just truth. Deal," he said. That evening, when he left, she sat alone on the porch again, Jasper at her feet, the quiet hum of crickets filling the dark. She could see the horizon blinking with police beacons miles away, faint and harmless now. But she knew better than to think it was over. Turner wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat. She glanced toward the field where his convoy had burned and whispered, "Next time I won't aim to warn." Then she leaned back in her chair, eyes open to the stars, knowing the next time might already be on its way, because some wars never end. They just wait for someone old enough and tired enough to finish them properly. Morning came gray and cold. The sky looked like a sheet of steel pressed low over the fields, and the quiet carried a strange hum, the hum of power lines that weren't supposed to be buzzing. Evelyn woke before dawn, poured herself coffee, and noticed first thing that the house was too still. No fridge hum, no clock tick, no soft shuffle of Jasper's paws from the kitchen. The power was gone. She tried the phone dead, the radio static. When she opened the back door, her stomach tightened. The satellite dish on the roof was split, in half, wires dangling like veins. She knew this kind of silence. It wasn't nature's silence, it was man-made, controlled, weaponized. They hadn't just cut her electricity. They were cutting her off. Down the highway, black vans rolled past the crossroads, unmarked but identical. They didn't stop. They didn't have to. The message was clear. They could reach her any time. Inside the farmhouse, Evelyn pulled out. A small radio she'd kept since her army days, a shortwave receiver older than most of the people chasing her. She turned the crank by hand until the faint hiss became a voice. It was Darius Holt. His tone was urgent, strained. "Evelyn, it's everywhere. They wiped your records, every article, every broadcast. It's like you never existed." She didn't answer right away. "Then I guess I'm finally invisible," she said. "No," he replied. "That's what they want. They're scrubbing the files, erasing the footage from the siege. Turner's people own the servers that store it." Evelyn set the radio down. "Then we take it back." "Take it back? You're a journalist," she said. "You know where truth hides in plain sight. Meet me at the library in town. Bring Agent Doyle." By noon, the power was still out, but the roads were clear. She drove her old Ford pickup into the center of town, the engine rattling like an old man's cough. The library's parking lot was empty except for a sedan with government plates and a black SUV that had seen too many miles. Doyle stepped out first, followed by Darius with a stack of papers under his arm. "You sure about this?" Doyle asked. Evelyn nodded. "Safer here than at home. My land's compromised." Darius spread the papers across a table inside photocopies, printouts, pieces of what was left online before her records vanished. "They scrubbed your service file, the arrest warrants for Travis Cole, even your husband's obituary. They're rewriting history again," she said. "Not just rewriting," Doyle added. "Replacing. There's a fake file circulating, calls you unstable, implies early discharge for misconduct. They're building justification for removal." Evelyn stared at the stack. "That's the same trick Turner pulled back in '72. Discredit the witness, bury the proof." Darius tapped the folder he'd brought. "Except this time we have evidence, the microfilm scans. I copied them before you turned them over." Doyle's eyes widened. "You what?" He shrugged. "Insurance. They were going to bury it, now they can't." Evelyn gave a quiet nod. "Smart boy." The library lights flickered then, once, twice, before dying completely. Doyle drew her weapon instinctively. Evelyn didn't flinch. "They're tracing the signal," she said. "We need to move." They stepped outside into the pale afternoon. Across the street, a van's door slid open. Men in tactical black, spilled out, faces hidden behind visors. Turner's private unit again, faster this time, more desperate. Evelyn whispered, "They're not here for me. They're here for the copies." Darius clutched the folder tighter. "What do I do?" "Run," she said, "and don't stop until you hit Topeka." "What about you?" "I'll keep them busy." He hesitated, then turned and sprinted through the alley. Doyle stayed beside her. "You can't fight all of them," she said. Evelyn smiled. "I don't need to. I just have to remind them what fear feels like." The first shot cracked through the quiet square. It wasn't hers. It hit the stone pillar beside her, sending chips flying. Doyle returned fire, taking cover behind a planter. Evelyn ducked low, rolled toward the truck, and pulled her rifle from the rack behind the seat. The familiar weight steadied her. The next two shots came fast and clean. Both tires of the lead van blew out, the vehicle jerking sideways into a lamppost. "Cover me!" Doyle shouted. Evelyn fired again, precise, disciplined. Every movement was muscle memory. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Turner's men were down, not dead but out of the fight. The rest retreated toward the van, dragging their wounded. Doyle exhaled, chest heaving. "You still got it." Evelyn chambered another round. "Never lost it." Within minutes, sirens echoed down the street. Local police, then county units. Turner's men were gone before they arrived, leaving only the broken van and shell casings, glittering like silver seeds in the sun. By evening, they regrouped at Harper's station. He slammed his hand on the desk. "That's it. I'm calling the governor. This is out of hand." Evelyn shook her head. "Don't. The higher this goes, the cleaner they make it look. We keep it small, we go local." Darius called from a payphone an hour later. "I made it to Topeka," he said. "I've got backups of everything. I'm going live tonight, independent feed, no network ties." Evelyn's voice softened. "You sure you're ready for that? Fight?" "I learned from the best," he said. That night, from her darkened porch, she listened to his voice echo out through the static of the shortwave. "Tonight we reveal the buried history of Project Sentinel and the woman who refused to vanish." The broadcast spread faster than anyone expected. The files hit online forums, encrypted servers, foreign news sites. Screens all across the country flashed the same headline: "Project Sentinel exposed. Government surveillance experiment confirmed." Turner's empire cracked overnight. Federal investigators raided his offices. Whistleblowers surfaced. The footage of his team attacking Evelyn's farm leaked, impossible to spin away. By dawn, her power flickered back on. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Life tried to pretend it was normal again. Doyle arrived at sunrise, weary but smiling. "You did it," she said. "It's over." Evelyn shook her head. "It's never over. It just goes quiet long enough for the next fool to think no one's watching." She looked out across her fields, gold, endless, alive again, and whispered to herself, "Let them come. The land remembers." For the first time in months, she poured a fresh cup of coffee and didn't reach for her rifle. Jasper lay beside her, snoring softly, the air clean and still. Some battles end not with surrender but with exposure. The truth had walked into daylight, blinking but unbroken. And Evelyn Grant, the woman the world tried to erase, sat beneath that daylight, steady, as ever proof that legends don't fade. They adapt. The headlines rolled in like thunder that wouldn't quit. Congress demands hearings over Project Sentinel. Veteran Sharpshooter summoned to testify. Turner under federal investigation. For most people, it was politics. For Evelyn Grant, it was the past clawing its way back into daylight. She watched it all from the same porch she'd defended months before, the same porch where blood, smoke, and silence had written her legacy. The wheat swayed gentle in the breeze, pretending the world wasn't on fire. Jasper slept at her feet, loyal as ever. Sheriff Harper stopped by that morning, his uniform freshly pressed, his voice careful. "They're calling you to D.C., he said. "You'll be under oath. Full Senate committee." "I've been under worse," she replied. "You sure you want this?" She looked toward the fields. "It's not about want. It's about finishing the page before someone else writes it for me." 2 days later, she boarded a plane for the first time in 20 years. The airport crowds felt alien, everyone with screens, everyone filming everything. She moved through them quietly, the way old soldiers do when they realize no one salutes anymore. Washington was chaos wrapped in marble. Reporters waited outside the Capitol like vultures at a battlefield. Darius Holt met her at the steps, microphone clipped but off. "You ready?" he asked. "I was born ready," she said, then added softly, "Just not for this nonsense." Inside, the hearing chamber buzzed with cameras, senators, aides, and too much perfume of power. Agent Karen Doyle sat behind her as liaison. Her presence, both comfort and shield. The chairman began, his tone dry as dust. "Mrs. Grant, we appreciate your appearance today. Please state your full name for the record." "Evelyn May Grant," she said. "You're aware these proceedings concern national security breaches tied to Project Sentinel?" "I'm aware they concern lies that have lasted half a century," she answered. A murmur rippled through the room. He cleared his throat. "We'll remind the witness to confine her statements to the questions asked." She leaned forward, steady. "Then ask better questions." The senators traded looks. Doyle smiled faintly. They grilled her for hours, about her service, her husband's involvement, the attacks on her property, the shootings. She answered each question with precision. No flair, no anger, just truth trimmed down to the bone. When asked if she regretted firing her rifle, she said, "No. Regret is for those who miss." When asked if she felt endangered by government officials, she said, "Only the ones who hide behind words like classified when they mean guilty." By mid-afternoon, the chamber was silent except for pen scratching. One senator, a woman from Oregon, finally said, "Mrs. Grant, after everything you've endured, what do you want from this committee?" Evelyn paused. "I don't want medals or apologies. I want the record corrected. Every name you erased, put them back. Every file you buried, dig it up. Then leave the dead alone." That line hit headlines within the hour. Outside, the press swarmed. Darius caught her as she stepped down the marble steps. "They're calling you the conscience of the country," he said. "Conscience doesn't trend long," she replied. "Tomorrow they'll find a new distraction." But that night something shifted. The footage of her testimony hit the networks raw, uncut. Her calm defiance, her voice that never trembled, it struck something deeper than outrage. Veterans groups across the country rallied. Schools wrote essays about her. Talk shows replayed her line, "Ask better questions." Meanwhile, Michael Turner's world collapsed. Investigations uncovered falsified budgets, secret programs, offshore accounts. Within a week, he was indicted on obstruction and conspiracy. Within 2, he vanished. When Doyle told her the news, Evelyn didn't flinch. "Men like him don't vanish," she said. "They retreat." She was right. 3 nights later, back home in Kansas, she found a note nailed to her fence post. No threats. Just 4 words written in perfect block letters, "We are not done." She burned it without a word. Harper begged her to accept federal protection. She refused. "I've lived through the worst," she said. "Let them try the rest." But Darius worried. He returned one evening with his car lights off, carrying a small device. "It's a tracker," he explained. "If anything happens, I'll know." She shook her head. "If anything happens, you'll be next. Keep yourself safe. Tell the story. That's protection enough." The days that followed were calm, eerily so. The town treated her like both legend and ghost. Children waved when she drove past. Grown men tipped their hats, unsure whether out of respect or fear. Then one stormy night, the world tried one last time to erase her. A single SUV pulled up to the gate silent, headlights off. Turner stepped out, alone, rain slicking his hair, to his forehead. He looked smaller now, his confidence eroded. Evelyn stood on the porch, rifle across her arm but barrel down. "You finally came yourself," she said. He laughed bitterly. "You destroyed everything." "No," she said. "You did that the day you decided the truth was inconvenient." He took a step forward. "That film, you think it saves you? It dooms us all. You exposed every security flaw this country ever had. I exposed the rot, she corrected. The country can heal from truth. It can't from corruption. He raised a small pistol then, trembling slightly. You don't get to end this. Evelyn didn't move. You already did the day you came for me. For a second, the world froze, the rain, the thunder, the decades between them. Then a single crack split the night. Not from her rifle, from the cow. Road behind him. Agent Doyle stepped out of a car, gun drawn. Turner dropped his weapon, face twisted in disbelief. You set me up, he hissed. Evelyn's voice was quiet. No. You walked into what you built. They took him away without handcuffs. He was too broken to run. When the lights faded and the rain slowed, Doyle turned to her. It's over now. Evelyn looked up at the sky. For him, maybe. She went back inside, brewed coffee, and sat in the same chair by the window, Jasper curled at her feet. The land outside shimmered wet and alive again. Tomorrow would bring new stories, new noise. But tonight there was stillness, the kind that felt like earned peace. And for the first time she let herself believe it might last, because some legends don't die in battle. They endure, quiet and unshaken, long after the world forgets why they fought. By the time autumn rolled across Kansas, the fields around Evelyn Grant's farmhouse glowed bronze and heavy, bending under the weight of harvest. The air smelled of earth and wood smoke again. The world had changed, though it pretended not to. Michael Turner's trial came and went with the cold wind. The charges stacked against him like sandbags: fraud, obstruction, unlawful surveillance, attempted murder. He never once looked up when Evelyn testified for the last time. Her words were few, but the courtroom went so still that even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. I'm not here to bury a man, she said softly. I'm here to make sure the truth doesn't get buried with him. The judge called her testimony the most concise dismantling of deceit ever recorded. Reporters called it historic. Evelyn just called it overdue. She went home that same evening, refusing interviews, declining honors, turning down every award. You don't get medals for cleaning up other people's mess, she told Agent Doyle. In the months that followed, Darius Holt's documentary aired nationwide. It was called The Last Marksman. It opened not with guns or politics, but with silence, the Kansas dawn breaking over golden fields, the sound of one woman breathing steady as the narrator whispered, "When the law forgot her, the land remembered." The film captured everything: her past at Fort McCoy, her calm defiance at the hearings, the siege that nearly ended her life. It ended with a close-up of her hand resting on the porch rail, the same hand that had steadied a rifle and carried the weight of a lifetime. Viewers cried, argued, wrote essays. Veterans called her a hero. Some still called her a threat. Evelyn didn't watch the broadcast. She didn't need to. She'd lived it. Winter came early that year. The farm slept under a white hush of snow. Evelyn kept to her quiet routines, feeding the animals, patching the roof, drinking her coffee. Before dawn. The rifle stayed locked away now, cleaned but untouched. Jasper had grown slower, his muzzle gray like hers. They matched, two souls at peace after too much noise. One morning, Darius came by unannounced. He brought her a small package wrapped in brown paper. "From the studio," he said. "You won an award." She laughed softly. "For what?" "Shooting. Straight?" "For telling the truth," he said. "They want you in New York for the ceremony." She shook her head. "Kansas is far enough from heaven for me." He smiled. "Then at least open it." Inside was a small brass plaque engraved, with 4 words, "Truth doesn't retire early." She stared at it for a long time, then nodded. "You tell them they got one thing right." They sat on the porch for an hour, not saying much. The sun stretched over the snow, melting thin rivers of silver through the drifts. Darius finally broke the silence. "What are you going to do now?" "Same thing I always did," she said. "Keep watch." "You ever think about leaving this place?" She looked out across the fields. "You don't walk away from land that's seen your blood and your peace. You let it hold you till it's done remembering." That afternoon, she walked the property, line one last time before the snow deepened. Every fence post, every wire, every gate latch told a story now. Her story. Not one written by the government or the news, but by her own hands. In town, people still argued about her. Some said she was a legend. Some said she was just lucky. But in every diner and schoolhouse, there hung a photograph Evelyn standing on, her porch head high, rifle resting beside her like a cane. The caption read, "The woman who reminded America what standing your ground really means." Agent Doyle called once more in spring, months after the trial closed. "They're naming a new veterans center after you," she said. "The Evelyn, Monsieur Grant Rehabilitation Wing." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Tell them I appreciate it, but don't let them hang my picture too high. I want the young ones to see the wrinkles. Makes the truth look earned." The following year, Jasper passed quietly, in his sleep. She buried him under the elm tree by the barn, the same place where the first flare had burned the night the gangs came. She marked it with a simple stone that read, "Loyal to the last." Time moved differently after that. Days stretched long, years folded soft. She grew slower, but her mind stayed sharp. Every morning she'd still wake before sunrise, open the curtains and whisper, "Still here." When she passed, it was quiet, peaceful, the way she'd always wanted. They found her in her chair on the porch, a half-empty mug beside her, her medals tucked neatly into a small wooden box. The rifle hung above the fireplace, spotless. At her funeral, veterans from every corner of the country filled the small-town church. Some saluted, some cried. Darius spoke last. "She didn't fight for glory," he said. "She fought because silence is dangerous. She taught us that courage doesn't always shout, it waits. It watches, and when it must, it speaks in the only language tyrants understand, calm defiance." The sun broke through the clouds just as they lowered her ashes beside Jasper's grave. The wind carried through the wheat fields one last time, a whisper that sounded almost like her voice. "Hold your ground." Years later, school children, on field trips, would stand by her old gate, tracing their fingers over the bullet-scarred metal post. Their teacher would say, "This is where an old woman reminded a nation that history belongs to those who tell it." And somewhere far beyond the horizon, if you listened close, you could almost hear the steady rhythm of her breath, the calm pulse of her presence, the echo of a rifle shot that changed everything without taking a life. Evelyn Grant was gone, but the land still spoke her name, because truth doesn't fade, it roots deep, and legends, the real kind, don't die, they simply rest.